All right, so now we're getting to our speaking. Our next speaker, we actually prepared something, and I prepared something. We'll find out how I do. Our next speaker is a professor here at NPS. He's a distinguished Toastmaster. When I met him the very first time, the first thing I noticed about him is his great sense of humor. I always look forward to his feedback, constructive feedback. He's gentle, he's kind, he's humble, he's wise, he's intelligent. He's going to be speaking from the Best Speaker Series, a set of programs offering additional information about basic speaking skills. This model is titled Beginning Your Speech, and will present some techniques to make speech opening more effective. The speaker for this module has been a Toastmaster for 12 years, has achieved the rank, like I said, distinguished Toastmaster, and he has given over 100 manual speeches. That means he has delivered over 100 opening to speeches as well. I must say, when I first started here, I was outside and I couldn't get into the building, and I called him, and he came outside and he picked me up, brought me here. I must say, I am really impressed and humbled to introduce Annie Bass.
So there I was, all alone on a huge stage. I just had the best introduction of my life. I was sitting in a room. There were 537 pairs of eyes looking at me. 537 bodies leaning forward in anticipation. And I opened my mouth and said, "Thank you very much for that wonderful introduction. There are some ideas that I'd like to share with you today, and I hope you find them interesting." The energy in the room dropped, like the air going out of a tire with a puncture in it. You could just feel everybody go away. Has that ever happened to you when you've begun a speech? Well, after hearing this presentation, you will have at least 4 ways of being more effective in beginning your speech than I was in that speech. You know, it's said that you never have a second opportunity to make a first impression. The beginning of your speech is that first impression. The first thing that you say is often the key that determines whether your speech will have an impact on your audience, or whether they'll just tune you out and be texting away as they stare blankly into space. There are a number of different methods of starting a speech in such a way that you can hook your audience in. You can start with a story by bringing them into your world. You can make it about them and have them understand what it is that they're going to get from it. You can have the impact of what the occasion is. Now, I gave an example of a story. I began the speech with telling a story about how I had an ineffective introduction. When I said, "There I was," did that grab your attention? Did you want to know where I was? What was I doing? I had your attention. That's one way to do it. Another way to do it is with a rhetorical question. Have you ever been in a situation where you just didn't know how to begin your speech? When you ask a rhetorical question, it gets the audience thinking about what it is that they're going to hear from you, and it puts them into your space. And so don't talk about yourself necessarily. make it about them. Because everybody is about what's in it for me. You notice that I said that you're going to hear at least 4 different ways of beginning your speech. And so that's what's in it for you. Think of one of the most effective beginnings of a speech that you've ever heard. 407 years ago. What the heck is that about? Even in 1863, that was a weird way of talking. Why didn't you say 87 years ago? Do you hear the difference between 87 years ago and 407 years ago? That tells you that what is about to be said is of great importance. It's very pompous, maybe a little arrogant. In the case of Lincoln, he probably had good cause. But it lets the audience know that this is something important and something that you should listen to. Another way is to make it dramatic. Have you ever seen a movie where they begin in the middle with the climax? In fact, just yesterday at the Monterey Institute Toastmasters, I heard a speech that could have been constructed like this. I was the evaluator for the speech. And the climax of the speech was when the gentleman was going to be bungee jumping. And he talked about standing there 14 stories in the air, kind of looking down with a rubber band tied around his leg. And now he had told the story in narrative form. I began by going here, and I went there, and then I did this and went to the other. My suggestion to him was to start the speech like this. Imagine you're standing on a ledge, 2 feet square, 14 stories above the ground. And you look down, and then you start to fall. Didn't that grab your interest? And then you rewind to the beginning, and you carry it forth up to that point. So let's make a dramatic beginning that's not necessarily at the beginning of the speech, but piques their interest. And you could go on and say, well, let me tell you how I got there. And from then on, the audience is in your pocket. So remember, you never have a second chance to make a first impression. Begin your speech with a quote. Make the audience drawn into your story. Don't leave them chapfallen with an ineffective beginning. Tell them how important it is, either through the words that you say or how you say them, like 4score. And finally, make it about them. If it's all about the audience, then you'll have a great beginning. That was